This session, which I want to make it slightly more informal, but I wanted to evoke one thing that came to my mind as we were closing the previous session. It was the idea of what Freud calls shadow memories. And it was very interesting to notice that instead of discussing blatantly or openly the more recent events of Eastern Europe particularly, regarding communism, of course, there was a tendency to go further back and try to discuss Mike's dead, to discuss World War II instead. I don't know if you've noticed this. And can you hear me in the back?
Yes.
Okay. Now you can. Okay. No, but the thing that sort of perplexes me somewhat is that there was maybe the writers unknowingly, and maybe all writers do that, you latch on to a monster that is more distant than the one that's closer, even though the reason why you seek monsters is because of the one that was more recent. And that's, I think, one of the ways in which we, and writers are particularly guilty of this, is that we live with pain, or however you want to call it, with trauma, by bringing out another trauma that is perhaps easier to discuss than the one that is more recent. I would suspect that the difficulties under the communist regime are still being worked out. And I think the metaphor that I started with regarding 9/11 is very similar. It's just too recent for us to even know what the vocabulary is, what are the emotions we are trying to evoke. We need more time. It doesn't mean that in 1946 nobody was writing about World War II. But I think that the real writing, the real serious writing about World War II is coming out 60 years later. I'm not surprised. Which brings me to Gabriela. Yes. Maybe you want to tell us a bit about, because we didn't have text. I was not given a text that was long enough to address anything. But maybe you want to tell us a bit about the Romanian situation and how you perceive it in your writing.
The first phrase I will try to say in English, but if I cannot succeed, I will ask my translator to help me. I would like to confess you that I was here at 9/11. It happens to be here. And of course I was so scared and so impressed. Then I didn't write anything about it because you told from the beginning about your story about 9/11 and about the writers. I asked me why I didn't write anything, any word, and I cannot even tell more about. It seems really too close, perhaps because I didn't write about it. It is like it happens yesterday or a week ago. And all that things are so hot, so close for me. I don't have the distance for it. Then about the communism, I think we have enough distance, 60 years, and we have 20 years living in more freedom or even in freedom. What is now in Romania, I think it is better than people from other countries think that the situation of Romania is still as was in Ceausescu's time or in communist time is not the same. There are big changes. Even we have serious problems. Even the past is for some of people, older people. For older people, old people, the past is closer than for young people, and sometimes they are nostalgic. But the reason is an economic one, is not a political one, I think. It's only because there is poverty, and it's more poverty for old people than for young people. This is my image. I'm not sure because each person has his own perspective about.
But you said something as you were describing 9/11, which I think is not irrelevant to you as I'm speaking to you as a writer. Am I speaking in the mic or?
No, you're good.
I'm good. Okay. The idea that if it is not written about, you remember it better. If you write it, what happens to a memory once you write it?
I think that when you write about something historical or personal, the memory is half destroyed. I'm not sure that it is right, but for me, I think that souvenir, my memories, souvenir, from my personal life that I used in my books, there are less emotional for me than before I have written. And for this reason I think that a writer is more poor, if I can say, in emotions and memoir, souvenir, then how to say, normal person, yes.
This is interesting. Did you all get that?
No.
I'll repeat it because it's pretty good. In other words, a writer has, let's just take it there. A writer has possibly fewer feelings than a normal person because a writer puts them to bed and basically writes them down. It's Alexander Herzen who said, the reason why I didn't write my memoirs any sooner is because I didn't want to alter them, or I didn't want to forget them. It's the same thing. A person writing memoirs usually ends up intruding on the authenticity of the memories. Well, anything else from Romania that we should know since we don't? I mean, do you know, besides, there's only one famous Romanian writer that Americans know about, it's Norman Maier. Other than that, I think it's sort of terra incognita, there's nobody.
Motivul este că sunt încă puține traduceri din literatura română și sunt puțini autori români care sunt încă până acum traduși.
The reason for this in existence is that just a few of Romanian authors enjoyed translations from Romanian into English, and that's the main reason for it.
Well, let's ask one more question. Do you think it is something, in other words, I don't think there's anything wrong with Romanian literature, it's that America maybe is not receptive to either foreign books or something about the Romanian sensibility?
If I know correct, in United States only 6% of the literature of the whole world is translated, and in Europe, as I know, 80% are Anglo-Saxon literature. The Romanian writers are more translated in Europe than in United States, but as I know, there are books, some of my colleagues, Mircea Cărtărescu, Filip Florian, young writers, they have a book translated, and probably next year will be more. Even my book will be translated.
Well, I have to say, thanks to Words Without Borders. How many of you are familiar with Words Without Borders? Some people, it's a site online, and we're lucky because they devote all their energies to bringing writers that we would never have heard about. And since the disappearance of Susan Sontag, foreign writers have very few champions here in the States. She was very good at that, bringing people that nobody had heard of, and suddenly they would become very famous. Thank you very much. I'm moving to Gabriela, who has written about the Armenian massacre. I just want to say something personal, because of the massacre of Armenians, I mean, okay. I'm mentioning this because I grew up with my grandmother, who was already very old when I was growing up, who had witnessed one of the Armenian massacres. There's been quite a few in Turkey. And so I grew up with the stories of the Armenians being massacred. These were sort of bedtime stories. It was my grandmother, but that's the way I was brought up. So I know a whole host of it. So I was very interested in meeting Gabriela and meeting her here. Antonia. I'm sorry. Did I call you Gabriela the first time too? Okay.
No problem. No. We can exchange.
One country, another country.
I like Romania, so therefore, well.
And no, but it was particularly sort of meaningful to me. The only book I have read on the Armenian massacre was the 40 Days of Musadak. So, and that's been a classic forever. But really, there's nothing much that has come by way of fiction or memoirs. There have been some memoirs, of course, but they don't rise to the level of sort of to adhere to the, what you might call the Romanesque conventions that we all expect from a good memoir. Otherwise it becomes just a report normally written for grandchildren so that they won't forget. And but I wanted to know, the easy question is to say, why write about the Armenian